uncensored about the Mandela Effect. I know there's a lot of people out there talking about the Mandela Effect. Some people are actually very upset that people are actually talking about it. And I think that's because they have an elementary understanding of physics as we know it. I don't claim to understand everything about physics, but I do know that there are possibilities that may exist that can account for some of the aberrations, changed memories, mutated memories, whatever you want to call it. But I was thinking to myself, because before I saw the Mandela Effect, I was actually walking into our grocery store very close to us, and I usually go and get my Special K and my Raisin Bran. So I love those two cereals. I'm not doing an ad for them, just letting you know. But I remember walking by and glancing out of the very corner of my eye, I saw Fruit Loops, but the spelling is what caught my eye, okay? And I turned around and looked at it, and I saw F-R-O-O-T, fruit, and then I saw loops. And I sat there and I kept staring at it for a while, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, it looks different. I'm like, wait a second, I was a spelling bee major in school. I used to always spell fruit, F-R-U-I-T, and I used to look off the Fruit Loop box in the morning when I ate my cereal. So either I'm going crazy or losing my mind like everyone else says, and some people claim, or maybe there is some validity to what's happening to a lot of people and not just me. I came home, and for a few weeks, I didn't say anything to my wife about it. I thought she would think I was crazy, and maybe it's just, you know, something I may have forgotten, but I was almost positive that I used that cereal box to spell that word to learn it in like second or first grade or something for the spelling bee. And, you know, it boggled my mind for a little bit. And the other one was a few years back, I had all these books that I had collected off the streets, and people were throwing them out. And I remember years ago, you know, when I saw the name of this book, it said Berenstain Bears, and I could have sworn that it used to be Berenstein. And I was telling my wife about it. This is back in 2012. So these two incidents are very widely apart. One is just a few weeks ago, and the other is 2012. So recently, I was looking at TV and I was seeing something about the Mandela Effect. I wasn't sure what it was, but then I saw a picture of the Fruit Loop box. So I clicked on it. I was like, oh, I wonder what they're talking about. And then when I found out what they were actually talking about, man, did that put me in a whole nother zone, because I know I wasn't going crazy. I just know, you know, people can sit there and say what they want, but I know I used that for the spelling bee. I used to use that box, F-R-U-I-T. I remember, you know, studying off it. And also the Berenstein, which is now Berenstain, was definitely a big change. So your memories aren't playing tricks with you. I think that something is going on. And a lot of people just say that without actually going and having some kind of explanation as to why that may happen or how it could happen. So I sat and thought about it, because I like to think about these things all the time. One of the things that came into my mind was that, you know, some people are saying, you know, how can you count on your memories? Well, you know, the tricky thing here is that your subliminal mind, where you pick up subliminal messages, like the ones on cereal boxes, like the ones in commercials, is pretty powerful. And if there's a change in that, in the way that looks, you'll detect it faster than you would anything else, because it's subliminal. Believe it or not, you'll know whether or not a lot of these big name brands like Nike would change their logo. You would notice it. You know, if Google changed their logo, you would notice it, but it hasn't happened yet. But some of the other major ones have happened, and you guys have seen a million examples of that. I may or may not post the examples, because you've probably seen it too many times for me to post it. I'm sure you can picture it in your head. I don't want to waste your time or waste my time. So as we go further, and you can use that when people try to tell you anything about, you know, your memory's wrong or this and that, you can't count on your memories. Your subliminal consciousness, your subliminal mind can pick up these things, and they're very powerful. That's how they get you to go shopping. That's how they get you to go to McDonald's when you're hungry if you eat meat. You know, that's how they get you to drink Coca-Cola when you're thirsty. You know, so just think about that. Subliminal, if it wasn't so effective, they wouldn't use it in commercials. Logos wouldn't be so important. So whoever says that says that you're crazy, to me, they're ignorant. They just don't know enough to talk about it. So here we're going to go a step further, because I'm going to take you into another realm. We've all heard of CERN, and that's in Switzerland, in Geneva, actually, where they have had a particle collider, a very big particle collider. I can't remember how many miles. I think it may be 20-something miles, you know, around, and it sends these particles going close to the speed of light and then colliding into each other, and then they record it with whatever systems they have to record with. But something new came into play, because while they were discovering all these new things about particles, like the hadron particle, I think, oh, the boson particle, my bad, I'm sorry. The boson particle is supposed to be the God particle, so that gave off some kind of signature that they were like, oh, this is a possibility that there may be the alternate realities. So that was the first sign. Now, the other thing that I mentioned before is, how did they record these things? Well, I'm not sure if they're actually using quantum computing yet, but quantum computing is actually something very interesting. So here is where we can parallel the Mandela effect, or Mandela effect, tomato, tomato. So we can parallel these two ideas together, you know, and show how they actually work that one affect the other. So here we go. You know, when I amuse myself sometimes, I forget what I'm saying because I start laughing about my own shit. Sorry about that. So now getting back to the particle collider and recording the information of what happens after the particles collide, that's the interesting part. I don't know exactly what CERN is using, but I do know that there is a new form of computing, and it's called quantum computing. Now, how that works is that normally a bit in a computer can either be on or off, or 1 or 0 is really what it is, right? So 1 or 0. So it has two places that it can be, 1 or 0. Now, in quantum computing, they can actually, I somehow, I guess because of the superposition meaning that maybe there's reality and then there's not reality. The reason I say maybe is because even the physicists aren't sure exactly what's going on, but they have some clues as to what's happening, because the D-Wave company and their quantum computer can actually work extremely fast, because it doesn't only use the 1 and the 0 position, it can be in both states at once, which exponentially it can account for all the information, or generate the information. I mean, it's super fast. I can only give it to you in layman's terms. To be honest with you, I haven't gotten to the point of understanding everything, or even a smidgen of that stuff, but I do understand enough to explain it to you this way. I wanted to take this even a step further, because it's not only the D-Wave particle quantum computing that may have affected it. Now I'm going to go back to the quantum computing in a minute, but I want to bring in another physicist. His name is Professor James Gates, who happens to be the president's advisor on this type of stuff, physics. He was questioned in one of the great sessions that they have with deGrasse. You know deGrasse, I forget his first name, but deGrasse. He's the one that kind of made physics cool to everyone, deGrasse. Now, he was hosting the show with Professor James Gates and a few other great minds in different areas and different realms, and they were talking about quantum physics and where we're going and what's happening. And it was a big dispute, and not dispute, but a big debate. You know, everybody had their own answers. But when it came to Professor James Gates, he became very well known for the idea of finding a computer code within the fabric of existence, within the matrix of reality. All right, and how he explains it, it's based on the same idea of superposition. And he says within the fabric of existence, he says you actually find the 1s and the 0s. Not just any 1s and 0s, the kind that you would find in your browser, in your computer. And they're error correcting codes, not just any code at all, it's the error correcting codes. The error correcting codes go in and fill in the stuff that may have been left out. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You have to pay really close attention. If we're already using, quantum computing like D-Wave is using, that's the company, let's say that they are going into superposition and coming back. Wouldn't you say somehow like almost like a domino effect, but we push something on the other side of reality, whatever that is, and something gets moved on this side? What if it happens like that? I'm just posing a thought, and I feel kind of like Rod Serling just now. I'm just posing a thought of what that could be. Could that be a reality there? Could we be able to actually do that? That's a possibility. These are things that you have to look at. There could be an effect there that's causing the Mandela effect. That's one big possible way, because after all, what Professor James Gate was talking about was an error correcting code. What if somehow in this matrix that we're in, by them doing what they're doing, fooling around with the D-wave particle, with the quantum computing at D-wave, that they somehow affected this reality, and all these little things that we're finding slowly but surely is definitely reasonable. You know, I'm not saying that it is, but there is definite potential for this idea. You know, it's probable. It is a potential idea. It's a potential happening. You guys have to take the things that I said and go research them yourself. So the first thing that I talked about, of course, was the Mandela Effect, right? The second thing I talked about was CERN and the particle collider and how that may be affecting us, but how in fact that the quantum computing that D-Wave, the company, is using to be able to store so much information, much more than you could ever, an infinite amount now, I think, and run at extreme speeds because of being in superposition, right? Put that into context together and research it yourself. Research quantum physics, CERN, D-wave superposition, right? It's called annealing, and that's a whole process of trying to be more efficient with the energy by using superposition. So to go into that would be it would take a while for me to explain it, but I barely understand it myself. But that's what it's about, efficiency, right? How could you use the least amount of energy to get the most amount of work done, basically? So it's called annealing, right? So there's a classical position, which is the ones and the zeros, and then you go beyond the classical position, which is the 1 and the 0 at the same time in the superposition, right? So if you look that up and then you go from there, take a look at a little string theory, and then look at Professor James Gates in the error correcting code. Professor James Gates in the error correcting code that he's discovering within the fabric of existence. Take a look at these things, and then you tell me, if you're so goddamn smart, why you think that it's not possible if we're already tapping into those areas. Everything I mentioned is actual science, fact, not fiction. So go check it out. And that's what blows my mind, is the people that are dissing everyone that's actually talking about the Mandela Effect, but yet they have nothing to base their arrogance and negative, you know, ways of condescending on people like us who actually give the idea, you know, some thought, you know. But actually I can put a little bit of my own theories into it. So I hope that helped you guys in any way, and I hope if you have any questions that you'll ask me. I'm not saying I know everything, but whatever I have, my theories, I'll post them out there, and I hope you guys consider this like an open source code. You can add to it. Let's all work on this together is what I believe. So this is kind of fun for me. So again, it's me, Po Hindu, Uncensored, and I'm looking forward to hearing from your comments. And anybody argues with you, refer back to my video. You show them. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon.